Well, fam, we got it. We got more gameplay from Crimson Desert from IGN first. More gameplay. And this also will showcase mounts and some dev interviews and exclusive insights. Let's see what they had to say. I will also mention, I did find out from a source within the publisher of Crimson Desert, within Pearl Abyss, that the gameplay for IGN first they're using, it seems like most of it is PC footage, which is probably why it looks a good bit sharper and better than the previous footage, which was primarily console, if I recall correctly. But I believe this is all PC footage we're about to see.
It would be easy to take a quick look at Crimson Desert and assume it's...
I'm sorry, what? So for one, they show literal dragon mounts, which we've seen before, but you can see down in the bottom right, fire breath and fireball. You can like literally shoot fireballs from the dragon as you ride it. Okay. An actual mech for you to fight guys. Like the meme with Crimson Desert so far has been, number one, that it looks too good to be true, but people have played it, including myself. It actually just is that good. It's insane. And then the second meme related to it is people saying, Crimson Desert, you know, somebody asks Crimson Desert devs, what gameplay system do you want in your game? And they just say, yes. Because seriously, every time you see more, there's just more. Like, it's crazy. There's just more mechanics, more systems, more everything. It's outrageous. This one has cover fire, fire the cannon, fire machine gun, discharge EMP, and accelerate. They have EMPs. EMP, okay. Color me intrigued. I'm blown away. It also, they'll talk about it. I'll shut up because I was about to get into something. I'll leave it.
It'd be easy to take a quick look at Crimson Desert and assume it's another fantasy action game where you hack and slash your way through enemies with repeated presses of the attack button. And if you equip your protagonist, Cliff, with a sword, you can certainly do that. But tap two of your controller's face buttons together and he'll lunge, thrusting the blade directly forward. If you then press both the light and heavy attack buttons at the same time, he'll transition into a powerful, magic-infused overhead slam, bringing his sword down in an arc of dizzying particle effects. There's more than one way to swing a sword basically, and that applies to everything in your combat arsenal. Transition from aiming a bow into a dodge roll and you'll trigger a brief window of medieval Matrix slow motion.
I'm sorry, I just have to point this out. Just take a moment to break down what you're seeing. Like, just in terms of movements, okay? So like maybe I drop it to quarter speed and then we can actually see it. Because it's so easy to just watch something like this and kind of tune out what you're seeing. But like seriously, in this, you're going to see him run over here. So you can pick up enemies. You can pick them up and move them, which implies for stealth, there's reason to move bodies. He runs over here, does the like spinning slash, hits the guy. He just turned him into ice because he infused it with the ice ability. Okay. So because of that, now the dude is frozen. And he shatters. The horse is left standing. He spins back around. You see this guy's running in. All of the NPCs have collision physics with the horse that's running. So they're dropping and getting knocked over as the horse rides through. All those guys got knocked down by the horse riding by. Cliff, the protagonist, then does this attack that knocks them down even further. Rolls into another attack. And then charges up an attack that turns into a pole vault with the spear as he jumps down, drop kicks these guys into a wall, and then rolls out of it. It's just absolutely insane. Everywhere you look, there's just little bitty detail, little bitty thing here. And it happens so quickly that it's easy to miss it, which is why you kind of slow it down and you take a moment and you're like, oh my God, like there is so much happening. It's crazy.
Aiming a bow into a dodge roll, and you'll trigger a brief window of
no deformation while you're fighting.
Perfect for scoring a headshot. Cast a spell at the apex of a jump, and you'll launch yourself into the air, riding the energy of the magic's blast. And, in perhaps the most entertaining example, hold two face buttons in conjunction with shifting the direction of the left analog stick to unleash a variety of increasingly amusing wrestling moves, from simple grapples to human hammer throws. For this month's IGN First, we spoke to the design team at Crimson Desert developer Pearl Abyss to learn how they crafted this deep, multi-layered combat system. The very first thing they said was both surprising and helped contextualize everything. One of the key inspirations for Crimson Desert's combat was retro arcade games like Samurai Showdown, Final Fight, and King of Fighters. Suddenly, all those multi-button combos and link moves make much more sense. But those fighting game combos are not necessarily the thing that Pearl Abyss intended to replicate. The team
I will say that I think the new meta for a lot of these types of third-person adventure games is going to be heavy inspiration from old school fighting games or even some of these hybrid action games. For example, Phantom Blade Zero is not your standard Souls-like game in the sense that it's like R1 light attack, R2 heavy attack. Does not work like that. Instead, it's about combos. It's about positioning with a combo and then transitioning with a weapon swap into another combo and juggling and stuff like that. And this is similar to that, where there's a lot of complexity in the inputs, and that's where the challenge is found. It's not necessarily just in what weapon you're using for this specific counter of this bad guy. It's specifically like your ability to tie things together. And I think that's going to be the new meta. Because I think games like Phantom Blade Zero and Crimson Desert are going to come out, and a lot of studios are going to be like, ooh, this is fresh. Because let's be real, the R1 light attack, R2 heavy attack, it's getting a little old. Like, it's just so simple, so overly simple. In my view, I would like something a little fresh, and this very much is that.
The team cites the strong sense of impact that comes with each blow, both inflicted and received, as a key aspect they wanted to capture. That's clear not just in the visuals, but in the crunchy audio. The sound design team directly references Capcom as an inspiration, but across the 10 different boss battles I've fought so far, plus plenty more skirmishes in the open world, it's clear that there's more to it than that.
It's also just insane again, like if you just take a moment, look at the crowds in the distance. They are not just handling everything happening locally. All of the NPCs in the distance are being simulated, are fighting each other. You can see on the mini map how many different NPCs are fighting all around the map. There are hundreds of them. And this is something I saw in the demo that I did back at Summer Games Fest, where, like, seriously, there's so much happening. It's outrageous. And you've seen the movement where, like, you grapple onto this rock, you swing up to that watchtower, and then you swing from the watchtower up to this burning pyre up here, and there's going to be enemies up there. All the while, these guys are still fighting. All of it's still being simulated fully and dynamically. It's absolutely crazy. It's just outrageous. There's so much happening.
Across the 10 different boss battles I've fought so far, plus plenty more skirmishes in the open world, it's clear that there's more to it than that. Fighting game characters have access to many different moves that can be chained together to create unique approaches and strategies. Open world games, on the other hand, typically have a much more restrained moveset. A dodge, an attack, and a counter, for instance. But despite being a fantasy open world game itself, Crimson Desert's long list of combat moves seems to be gunning for the breadth of options that fighting games thrive on. Cliff's ever-expanding ability tree means there's a multitude of ways to approach any fight. It's not just ranged versus melee, but the more minute choices within those options. Will you weave kicks and suplexes into your sword fight? Channel lightning down your blade? Use whistling arrows to summon artillery strikes? The important takeaway here is that Pearl Abyss refuses to provide any real strict definition for Crimson Desert's combat system.
Dude, like, what is happening? We just saw the giant mech, two little mechs, and then just casually, look at the shadow that goes over the ground.
Is that Pearl Abyss refuses to provide any real strict definition for Crimson Desert.
Nope, that's not a bird. That's a freaking dragon, dude. Like, seriously. The more you look at it, it just gets crazier and crazier. It's absolutely outrageous.
Unlike something like Batman Arkham, there's no rhythm or pattern to follow. The combat team told me that they had no interest in creating a game where you have to respond to on-screen prompts by pressing specific buttons, the kind of system we've seen in games like Mad Max, Shadow of Mordor, and both Marvel's Avengers and Spider-Man games. Instead, the studio aims to fulfill a player's fantasies by allowing them to do whatever they want in any situation. That arguably makes Crimson Desert's approach to battle a bit loose, and for some, the distinct lack of rules or rhythm may be frustrating. There are no hard counters for particular enemies, for instance, nor any kind of strict rock-paper-scissors relationship relationships between different attack or defense types. A particular weapon may be stronger against shielded enemies, for instance, but there's no requirement for you to use it. The same applies to bosses. While they certainly have attack patterns that can be memorized and weaknesses that can be exploited, Polar Abyss has no interest in demanding you pay attention to that. The team believes that any method of attack should be valid. Well, within reason. You can't swing a 500-pound monster by its ankles, of course.
Dude, it's also the fur sim on the monster while he's attacking you. It's crazy. I do think this is important to note, though. This is one of those games where if you go into it with wrong expectations or a misunderstanding of what it's going to be, you're probably going to get super freaking frustrated. Because if you try to play it, and I ran into this when I first booted it up and tried the demo, if you try to play it like a Soulsborne game, you're going to have a bad time because it does not play that way. It plays very differently. And I think there's going to be a learning curve for many people when they boot it up, because we've just been trained over the last 10 years of all of these AAA adventure games doing the very simplistic, maybe not simplistic, but the very familiar move set and controller setup of just, R1 light, R2 heavy, maybe there's a combination, maybe there's one special ability, but there's always a parry and there's a dodge with iframes. That's sort of the meta. That's what all of these games are using now. And this just plays very, very differently. And if you try to play it similarly to those with quick parrying and stuff, it just doesn't work that way. It's not built that way. So there's going to be a learning curve, but as long as people are able to understand that going in, I think it'll be easier.
This, there if you want it, but no worries if you don't approach, extends out into the world itself. The black space engine that powers Crimson Desert is able to simulate elemental reactions. So water can either freeze or conduct electricity when struck by the correct spell, while wood will burn and smolder when set alight. The combat team cites the modern Legend of Zelda games as inspiration for this, in which there's constant interaction between you and the environment.
Like this fight, he's standing in a giant puddle, wearing metal armor. I'm guessing he has a weakness to electricity, and if you use an elemental attack and pop the shock collar, it'll deal added damage. That's, call it an assumption or a hunch, but I think that's a safe thing to think, because they've taken that as a point of inspiration from across the game where, oh, this is a fire-based enemy, I'm going to use an ice attack and it'll freeze it, get rid of that. Or this enemy is on fire, I'm gonna do, or is in the snow with the Whitehorn boss fight, I'm gonna use fire because he's probably really sensitive to heat, so I can do that. All of that's been considered. Again, it's just added complexity and nuance and all of that. It's super cool to see. Edgar, thank you for the 10. Hi, Luke. To me, it looks like The Witcher 3 +++. Kind of exciting. Oh, I think it's very exciting. And like I said, many people look at this and are like, it looks too good to be true, which I think is a totally fair feeling to have, because it does kind of look too good to be true. But then we've played it, but it is real. I don't know if it ends up being, all of 6 hours long, or maybe there's some catch with it where it's yeah, it's amazing in all these ways, but the story is awful. I don't know if there's a catch, but we haven't seen it yet. I mean, it seems just wildly impressive across the board. No game is perfect. There's always going to be some things. If anything, I could see a lot of people maybe getting frustrated at how complex it is because there's so much going on. But other people, maybe just as many or more, will love it for that very reason, because there's so much. Oh, I mean, one of the top comments on this video, oh yeah, can't wait to watch the what 1,000 hours of playing Crimson Desert looks like video. Because that's going to be a thing. There's going to be a lot of it. And the people who are going to be good at this are going to be amazing. Can you imagine? It's going to be outrageous once people have built out end game characters. It's going to be just crazy. 900 hours of gameplay. I'm hoping it seems like it. Because again, you got to remember, these guys did Black Desert Online. Their experience and expertise is in a gigantic online MMO. That's what they are known for and what they're really good at. And those games are built around mass content. It's built around tons of complexity to keep you engaged for hundreds or even thousands of hours. That's what they're good at. And that's what this engine is built around too. So I'm just thinking that this is the first of many games that are being developed in Eastern studios. But the first of probably many that are coming of these studios that have previously used their talents to make MMOs, mobile games, and some of these more niche, or not niche, some of these mass market games in Eastern markets. But now they're breaking into international global markets with these big single player like flagship games like Crimson Desert, like Phantom Blade Zero, and even like Black Myth Wukong and some of the others.
But this is very
What's the engine? It's their own proprietary engine.
much a system that you can master and exploit if you choose to, rather than a core component of combat. For instance, there won't be a boss battle where you have to freeze water to hold your foe in place, or coax them into a metal grid you can then electrify with a lightning spell.
Or what we call gimmick fights. They will have options within boss fights where if you're resourceful and you think of something, you can do that. But it's not like the boss fight has been built where it's like you have to use the giant slayer sword from the back of the arena, otherwise you can't beat him without taking 3 hours of slightly slicing bit by bit. They're building in a way where they want everybody to be able to come up with their own solutions to it that are clever and unique. For example, this boss fight is out in the open. It's in a courtyard. So what you can do, you remember he mentioned the arrows, the whistling arrows that you can shoot down, and then it calls in artillery in certain areas of the map that have that available during like big battles and stuff. This boss fight is at the end of that sequence of a raid on a castle, so you can use those whistling arrows to call in artillery strikes. Because the game is fully dynamic, when I did this boss fight at Summer Games Fest, I just wasn't really thinking. I tried to pop the artillery arrow and shoot it at his feet, and I was like, maybe it's just like you shoot this and then explosions go off. But no, you know what happened? This was insane. I shot that arrow that calls in artillery on that location, and I hear through the ceiling of the building in this arena that's inside the castle, I hear on the rooftop the explosions going off just outside of the artillery. Because the arrow went down, they actually launched the artillery and it landed on the roof above the room where I was fighting. Because it's fully dynamic. It's not just like, oh, well, the explosions go off where you shot it and, you just don't think about it too hard. It's like, no, they actually launched it. It went up in the air and then it came down. But because this was covered, the explosions didn't get into the arena. And there's going to be a bunch of stuff kind of like that.
Water to hold your foe in place, or coax them into a metal grid you can then electrify with a lightning spell. Cliff is not a wizard, and so his spells come courtesy of a bracelet that grants him simple mastery over fire, ice, and lightning. But new weapons and gear help expand his ability set further than the unlocks available on your skill tree. There's a spear, for instance, which opens up like a propeller and blasts enemies with bursts of wind like a deadly airzuka, and a sword that summons an angry genie-like creature.
Look at that.
The further you progress though, the wilder these options become. Cliff is able to ride a number of mounts, which in the early hours are simple horses with no remarkable talents. But head into the territory held by the Black Bears faction and you'll be able to saddle up on a massive grizzly, which can swipe at foes with sharpened claws, effectively thinning out herds of barbarians. Fast forward a few hours and things become stranger still. Your simple horse could be traded for a raptor. Yes, you can ride on the back of a literal dinosaur. If you prefer your scaly mounts to fly and breathe fire, then Crimson Desert also has that covered too. Fantasy's most important creature is present and correct here, and in the game's later hours you'll be able to command Tristar the Dragon, who will swoop in at your beck and call. But that's not the wildest option. Dispelling any notion that this is a typical high fantasy video game, in Crimson Desert, you can pilot a mech. Yes, really. The Dwarven Engineered Battle Robot is a late-game treat that asks the question, what if a Bioshock Big Daddy and a Titanfall mech had a baby? Equipped with thrusters, machine guns...
Which is a question I've asked many times.
What if a Bioshock Big Daddy and a Titanfall mech had a baby? Equipped with thrusters, machine guns, multi-target lock homing rockets, and a wide-radius EMP blast, your sword and board-wielding enemies don't stand a chance. Fire-breathing dragons and machine gun-toting mechs could absolutely destroy Crimson Desert's balance, but they've been carefully plotted on the campaign's overall power curve. Pearl Abyss's combat team explained that such mounts are not designed to be simple tools that you can use whenever you want, and so all of the robot's destructive devices drain a limited fuel gauge, which, when depleted, will put the machine out of action. This means you can't just use this modern marvel of technology in perpetuity. You won't be able to stroll up to a boss battle and decimate a knight with your stock of missiles.
Until we get mods that allow you to do that very thing.
But when you are in the pilot's chair, there's no denying that things become more of a massacre than an even matchup. Pearl Abyss is happy with this power spike though. The team considers it something of a present or a reward for players who have progressed so far into the game. As you can see, there is a wide range of combat options to say the least, and that brings us back to the fighting game comparison. Something like Street Fighter is arguably the inverse of Dark Souls, as in a From Software game, the true challenge is learning everything about your enemy and then attempting to exploit that, whereas in a fighting game, the challenge is to learn everything about your character and master their moveset. Pearl Abyss subscribes to the Street Fighter approach, and explains that the goal is for Crimson Desert's difficulty to become increasingly more manageable the more you master Cliff's abilities. That's easier said than done though. Like a fighting game, there's the sense that every one of Cliff's actions has an alternate version if you combine it with the right skill. This naturally creates depth, but also complexity. Dive in without any instruction, and it can feel quite overwhelming. In an attempt to keep things as simple as possible, Pearl Abyss has put a lot of focus on what each button does. The idea is that there's consistency in every action. If you want to introduce an element into an action, you build on your existing knowledge of the controller. Clicking the thumbsticks, for instance, fires magic spells from your palms. Click the left stick to use your left palm, click the right stick to use your right palm. And so to do a triple jump, which is powered by your magic spells, you string together an L3, R3, L3 combo, rather than tap the jump button 3 times. At first glance, Crimson Desert certainly looks like many other open world games.
It's a good way of breaking it down though, because that does make more sense to me, where it's like we're building on what you already understand about the controller, and that's how it works, whether you're holding this weapon or whether you're just exploring. The controller will respond to the inputs based contextually on what's going on, but ultimately the abilities and the different things you're doing are consistent from button press to button press. Makes sense.
And that's not an unfair comparison. As we'll explore later in this month's IGN First, there are plenty of genre staples here, from puzzle dungeons to faction quests to bounties posted on the town bulletin boards. In totality, this is not an unusual game, but zoom in on the combat and you'll find quite an unusual beast. It's built atop the classic staples. There's still dodges and parries and regular attacks, but never before have I played a medieval fantasy game where I can chain Spider-Man's swing into Batman's glide into a ground pound that's delivered like Sonic the Hedgehog doing his best Hulk impression. In short, it's safe to say that Crimson Desert is trying something different. For more from Crimson Desert, check out our exclusive gameplay videos, and be sure to stick with IGN throughout the entire month of October for even more insights into this fantasy open world adventure.
I mean, I told you guys last year, I was like, I think Expedition 33 is going to be something special. I just had that gut feeling. It just hit me. And I've had that gut feeling about Crimson Desert for a while. Like, barring some crazy reveal of some nonsense I don't know about. This game, I think, is going to blow people's minds. It's going to blow people's minds. It's just absolutely crazy. The only question mark I still have with the game is with the story and the narrative, because pretty clearly the gameplay has received a crazy amount of focus. So I'm mainly just concerned, maybe not concerned, I'm curious about the story. I just don't know. I don't know what they're doing there. There's been little snippets and tidbits where they show like the sort of floating islands, the Sky Islands. I wonder if they show any in the gameplay that we just watched. I don't think so. But basically there's like a whole new dimension on the upper areas in the environment where you can't really see any there in here, but there's like islands way up in the atmosphere that you can go up to and explore, and they're very reminiscent of like some of the first civilization locations in Assassin's Creed, for example. So I know that there's going to be an interesting story that ties together the fantasy and sort of futuristic stuff. I just don't know what that is. So I'm curious, but we'll find out. Either way, I think that in terms of gameplay, especially, I think this is going to be absolutely crazy. On PC, it's also looking really, really good. I mean, come on. It's absolutely crazy. I don't know what this hardware is specifically that they're running on. All they told me was PC, but I will say, I mean, draw distance, level of detail, the sim that's going on is crazy. The fight against the snow giant looked way smoother in the PC footage compared to the console footage we saw, which was like a little rough around the edges, but also it was relying really heavily on upscalers, which is tough when there's so much hair and also particle effects moving around with the snow. So I would guess this is one of those games that's going to be heavy. But like I've said before, I'm okay if a game is hard to run if it looks hard to run. If it looks really, really good and it takes a supercomputer to get 100 frames, okay, I respect it. At least it looks good. My problem is when a game looks like ass and then it still runs like ass. That's when I have a problem with it. But this seems to be a game that graphically, in terms of dynamics, is just out of this world. And so I'm assuming it's going to be heavy. I don't know if this is running on 5090 or a 3080. I have no idea. But they still have months and months to work on it. What, 5 months, I think, because it's March. So they have months to work on it, and you better believe that's one of their top priorities is polish, polish, polish. So they're working on it. Can't wait to see more. And there's going to be more because IGN has this deal with them. So buckle up. And I hope to have a fun, unique thing with the game to announce relatively soon. We're working on stuff that I think could be really cool. So I'll keep you in suspense. He took my thing.